Hello, and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. I'm Haley Perot. Kenora Conservative MP Eric Melillo is calling on Thunder Bay Rainy River MP Marcus Pawlowski to oppose the Trudeau government's carbon pricing policy, but Pawlowski suggests it's the Conservatives who are showing a lack of common sense. Melillo held a news conference on Monday morning in front of Pawlowski's Thunder Bay office. He wants the Liberal MP to break ranks with his party and support Conservative efforts to cut the federal carbon tax, which is scheduled to increase on April 1st. Melillo connects the carbon tax to the increasing costs of living that many in the region are struggling with.
There's been some heartbreaking stories people have been sharing, and I've been hearing not just from people in my backyard in Kenora, but from the Rainy River District, from Mr. Pawlowski's riding, reaching out to me and sharing those stories as well. So again, that's why we're here calling on him and on all the NDP and Liberal members across Northern Ontario to join us in our call to stop this carbon tax hike.
I'm going to stand up for the interests of the people of my riding. People keep saying, like, you're not standing up for the people of my riding. Yes, I am. I'm standing up for them, but I'm standing up for their kids who are in school, who don't vote, and their grandchildren, because it's in their best interest that we fight climate change. It's in their best financial interest that we put our money in now and we do what is required now in order to affect climate change.
Pawlowski says the Conservatives are ignoring the high price of climate change, with billions of dollars being spent to deal with forest fires, flooding, and storms across the country. Meanwhile, he says the idea that the carbon tax is to blame for the increased cost of living is, quote, baloney. An area mining company has made a major donation to help bring a new long-term care facility to the town of Marathon. Barrick Gold has given $1 million to support North of Superior Healthcare Group's Families Closer to Home campaign. That's propelled the fundraising effort more than halfway to its $2 million goal, with about $1.4 million raised so far. The money is to help support the construction of the $14.2 million Marathon Long-Term Care Project. To recognize Barrick's contribution, the facility will now be known as Barrick Care.
It's going to be a physically attached wing to the hospital, similar to what we have in our Terrace Bay Hospital. Small long-term care. It's probably going to be the smallest long-term care home in the province with just 14 beds, but meeting all the modern standards that the Ministry of Long-Term Care requires of us. And so 4 private rooms and then 10 shared accommodation rooms. And what you would expect in a typical long-term care home around recreation areas and dining areas, a spiritual facility, a chapel kind of facility, physiotherapy space.
Construction is now underway, and the facility is expected to open in spring or summer of 2025. Additional sponsorship opportunities are still available to help raise the necessary funds. Northwest Region OPP were dealing with snowy conditions and several highway closures last weekend, and there were also a pair of frightening collisions at opposite ends of the region. This pickup truck ended up on its roof after a collision with a moose near Marathon last Sunday morning. It happened on Highway 17 east of the Steel River Bridge. The driver of the vehicle was taken to Marathon Hospital with minor injuries. Meanwhile, Dryden OPP were called to a single vehicle crash on Highway 665 last weekend. The car struck a hydro pole and rolled several times. Police say the driver was very fortunate to sustain only minor injuries. They were subsequently arrested for impaired driving after blowing over twice the legal limit. And the highway collisions and closures continued on Tuesday and Wednesday due to that major snowstorm that hit the region. One of the crashes involved a snowplow and a pickup truck. It happened Wednesday morning on Highway 599 between Ignace and Pickle Lake. The pickup truck ended up flipped onto its roof. Fortunately, there were no life-threatening injuries. The highway was closed in both directions for most of that day, while officers conducted their investigation. Meanwhile, another snowplow got stuck in the ditch on Highway 102 Wednesday morning in front of Wildwood Variety. And there were at least 2 transport crashes on Tuesday during the storm. The rig flipped over on highway near Chappaqua, and another transport went off Highway 17 between Kenora and Vermilion Bay. OPP say there were no injuries and no charges have been laid on either incident. Canada's 2 federal ministers for Indigenous people were both in Thunder Bay on Thursday to announce new childcare funding initiatives. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu and Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Ananasangari were joined by local MP Marcus Pawlowski to announce a $1 billion loan program for new childcare spaces. The announcement comes ahead of the Trudeau government's 2024 budget. Along with the $1 billion in loans, the Child Care Expansion Loan Program includes $60 million in non-repayable grants for public and non-profit child care providers nationwide to renovate and expand. There's another $10 million over 2 years to train more early childhood educators and $48 million over 4 years to forgive student loans for ECEs who stay and work in remote and rural areas.
This particular announcement is about building capacities to ensure that we have more spaces available, particularly in rural and remote communities. It's also about ensuring that we have a workforce that's able to fill these very important roles.
One of the challenges that we see in many different kinds of care is that it's harder for rural and remote people to attract talent and then keep talent. And we believe that by providing this loan forgiveness, it will ensure that students that are considering practicing in a rural or remote context will have that extra little push to get them there.
Here at our child care centre in Confederation College, our wait list is over 1,000 young children at this point in time. We can't meet that demand, so this expansion should help all of our daycare centres in Thunder Bay and across the region to meet the demands for our families.
According to staff with the college's ECE program, the region has seen a surge in demand since the introduction of $10 a day daycare. The wait lists are over 1,000 for all local daycare providers, with some kids never getting a space before reaching school age. There were no details given as to how much of this new funding will be rolled out in northwestern Ontario. The Ontario government made a historic change this week to the rules that govern proceedings at Queen's Park. For the first time since it was established in 1867, MPPs can now address the legislature in an Indigenous language.
I am proud to support this motion that will allow me to speak my language, Anshinimun, in this chamber.
Kiiwetinoong MPP Sol Mamakwa was very emotional about the change as the legislature's only fluent speaker of an Indigenous language. He spoke about the loss of language caused by residential schools and other assimilation policies, and the importance of languages in preserving First Nations cultures and histories. Until now, the standing orders at Queen's Park only allowed MPPs to address the House in English or French.
If I did differently and spoke my language beyond a few words at the beginning or end, the Speaker would have to enforce the standing order. This has been a form of forced assimilation right here in this legislature. So this is very monumental for me. And I don't know, this is for the people that are not allowed to speak their language. This is for the people that have lost their language.
No more asking for permission to speak your language. There are no more barriers here in this place for you to celebrate the long-standing history and culture that is, in fact, attached to languages.
The motion, which was put forward by Conservative House Leader Paul Calandra, received broad support, with a standing ovation on both sides of the House. Mamakwa and any future MPPs now simply need to provide notice of the language they intend to speak in order to arrange for translation services. Time now for a short break. When we come back, we'll hear again from Sol Mamakwa, this time on his concerns about the new Police Services Act.
Gotten worse while Ontario delays the changes needed to enforce laws on reserve.
Welcome back. The MPP for Kiiwetinoong is calling for changes to Ontario's new Community Safety and Policing Act, which is set to take effect on Monday. Saul Mamakwa says the new act needs an amendment to ensure that First Nations can be properly policed.
On April 1st, the long-delayed Community Safety and Policing Act will come into force. Under the CSPA, First Nation laws are exempt from being enforced. Criminal behavior on reserve has gotten worse, while Ontario delays the changes needed to enforce laws on reserve. Speaker, fixing it will only take a simple amendment. Will the Premier commit to making that amendment immediately?
Well, thanks, Mr. Speaker. You know, First Nations communities are encouraged to work collaboratively with their local police service to determine what enforcement options are best for them. And the provincial and federal government, as the member knows opposite, do not direct any police services in Ontario. It is very important to know that I stay in regular contact with the police chiefs on a regular basis, including those serving First Nations communities.
Meanwhile, MPP Lise Vaugeois was questioning the Ford government this week about the lack of significant wage increase for force firefighters in the provincial budget released on Tuesday. Instead, the government provided a lump sum payment for the MNR fire crews, and the issue sparked a heated exchange at Queen's Park.
Your government announced a one-time bonus for wildland firefighters, a great PR stunt that completely ignores the need for a higher base salary for these workers. It continues to amaze me how disrespectful the government is towards wildland firefighters. According to OPSU, the bonus was a take-it-or-leave-it offer that did not come out of consultation with the workers. Yes or no, will your government commit to permanently raising the wages of wildland firefighters?
It's absolutely astounding that the opposition stands up and takes what was a $5,000 bonus in the hands of heroes, in the hands of people that go out every day and do a tough job, and try and turn that into a negative. Mr. Speaker, it is an opportunity to show those that are in the system that we respect the fact that they have knowledge that they want to share with others. It's an opportunity to make sure that everybody throughout AFFES is receiving compensation this year that recognizes the efforts that they go through all the time.
Back to Thunder Bay News, officials at Thunder Bay Regional Hospital are working to erase the stigma around substance use and addiction. The hospital kicked off its anti-stigma campaign this week, and it's meant to bring awareness and educate staff on appropriate strategies to provide care to patients facing mental health and addictions issues. Jessica Clement has the details.
Thunder Bay Regional is changing the way the hospital talks to patients and staff about addiction and substance use with an anti-stigma campaign. It kicked off on Tuesday with the staff pledge signing meant to start the conversation. Substance Use and Addiction Training Project co-lead Joelle Macy says stigma can discourage people from seeking care.
The big issue that everyone, that we know or understand is that stigma is preventing people from accessing care in the hospital. We know it isolates families, and we know that at times it can also be a reason why patients decide to leave the hospital.
Project co-lead Julia Daniele says the campaign will highlight the negative stereotypes and barriers that are created by stigmatization and educate staff members on the appropriate tools to ensure every patient facing mental health and addictions is provided exceptional care.
In the coming weeks, we're going to go around to all of our hospital departments and speak about stigma, continuing that conversation, provide that opportunity for them to sign the pledge and start changing our language to use person-first language.
We start saying it's a patient with a substance use disorder, not an addict, not some of the other derogatory words that are being used.
Kyle Arnold, a harm reduction support worker with lived experience, also spoke at the launch of the campaign. He says after facing 2 decades of stigma, he knows how harmful it could be. He hopes the campaign will have a positive impact on the community.
I believe that there is so many amazing people working on this campaign that are striving to put that lens on stigma, that are striving to bring it out of the darkness so that we can speak openly about stigma and that we can really just help people feel heard help their stories feel heard, and as individuals, help them feel heard in a non-judgmental place.
Jessica Clement, TBT News.
Matawa First Nations launched their New Beginnings project this week. It's a web-based 211 directory aimed at people who were formerly incarcerated so they can access supports and services to help them reintegrate into society. The launch event included a demonstration of the directory by policy analyst Paul Magiscan. Organizers say this tool can be crucial for someone trying to locate services such as healthcare, legal support, mental health and addiction treatment, housing, and food. Matawa officials say people being released from custody face a lot of challenges. The goal is to help keep them from reoffending and ending back up into correctional institutions. The easy-to-use tool can be found on the Matawa website, along with additional information.
It's meant to connect people to service as efficiently and as quickly as possible, using the most up-to-date and current information and relevant with what is needed in the community. And we're hoping that this provides the services, not the services, but the connections to services. Finding help isn't always the easiest thing. We're hoping this makes it a little bit easier.
Matawa officials hope that shedding light on this tool will show that Thunder Bay is a great hub for services, making it easier for individuals to get the best help possible for what they need. Nipigon OPP have laid charges after a vehicle crashed into the gas pumps at the Husky truck stop in that community early Tuesday morning. Fortunately, there was no fire or explosion from the collision. Police had been requested to stop the vehicle as it headed eastbound towards Nipigon, but the crash happened before officers had located it. The 24-year-old driver from Thunder Bay has been charged with dangerous driving and mischief. Exchanging the healthcare experience of Indigenous people was the focus at a recent gathering hosted by St. Joseph's Care Group. It's called Walking Together with Humility, and it brought together organizations and Indigenous communities from all over the region. It comes up with strategies to help improve health service delivery in a way that works for Indigenous people. Josh Morano has the details.
For 2 days, healthcare providers, community agencies, and Indigenous communities from all over the Northwest gathered at the Victoria Inn to strategize on ways to improve health service delivery for Indigenous communities. The event was hosted by Nadoawe Benesi, the Indigenous Healthcare Division at St. Joseph's Care Group. Vice President Paul Francis Jr. says they're looking at solutions that promote cultural safety.
We're really challenging a lot of the hard issues. You know, in this conference, we'll be talking a lot about colonization, racism, discrimination. These are really big terms that I don't think people fully understand and people fully aren't aware. So, you know, we're trying to do it in a way that we're addressing it head on, but we're also trying to do it that's a way that's from our culture.
The event featured a diverse group of speakers and presenters, including a keynote address from Dr. James Makokis and Anthony Johnson, the Indigenous Two-Spirit team that won Season 7 of Amazing Race Canada. Makokis is a family physician at Kihiwin Health Services in Alberta and is one of the few doctors who combine traditional Cree and Western practices. He says it's really special for him to be at the gathering.
Listening to other people talk about how to get well and focusing on that joy and love and rebuilding our own systems from that place of wellness was really inspirational, because it is really tiring to work in systems like the medical system or the health system, which is an illness-based system. And it's reshifting our thinking to that place of kindness and compassion, which is found in our own ways of being as Inuak, as Indigenous people.
Both Makokis and Johnson say they hope action and change can come out of the gathering, with Johnson adding there needs to be more consistent funding for Indigenous-led healthcare at publicly funded institutions.
I hope that the leaders are able to understand what it is people need to bring indigeneity into the mainstream health system, and then actually put their money where their mouth is, literally. Because oftentimes what happens is there's a pilot program or there's a small stream of funding available, and then it goes away, and then all of the good things that happen as a result of that go away too.
Josh Morano, TBT News.
Time now for another short break. When we come back, a singer from this region celebrates a big weekend at the Junos.
I grew up in a trailer in northern Ontario without electricity and running water, and now I'm here.
It was a very memorable Juno Awards for Aisanabi last weekend. The singer-songwriter from this region won 2 Junos and also performed a tribute to a pair of Canadian music legends.
And I could never be set free as long as I'm a ghost you can see.
Aisanabi and several other artists honored Gordon Lightfoot and Robbie Robertson, who both passed away over the last year. The member of Sandy Lake First Nation grew up in Kaministiquia and went to school in Thunder Bay. He was nominated for 3 Junos and won 2 of them during the non-televised portion of the event. He took home trophies for Songwriter of the Year and for Alternative Album of the Year for his latest release titled Here and Now.
I grew up in a trailer in northern Ontario without electricity and running water, and now I'm here. For those that know me, know that I don't write speeches. I wrote a speech, but there's not time for it, so you don't get it.
Aisanabi did end up having enough time to thank his Indigenous-owned record label, his booking agent, his music producers, and other people who have supported him on his journey. The second annual Tournament of Hope is coming back to Thunder Bay in just over a week. The hockey and broomball tournament supports positive mental health for First Nations youth in response to the suicide epidemic. The tournament organizers recently received a sizable donation from Tikanagan Child and Family Services. $45,000 was given to Semple Enterprises for the upcoming tournament. The money is to help organize all the games and off-ice events that involve children and families from the various First Nations. Last year's tournament drew in hundreds of players from all around the North. The president and CEO of Semple Enterprises, Titus Semple, says this money will go a long way in helping them bring in families from the remote North to participate.
This year, with the event having been a success last year and it getting noticed in the community, we've had a lot more people step up to donate towards it. This one is by far the largest donation that we've received for the event.
The Tournament of Hope kicks off April 8th and runs until the 13th. There will also be a fashion show incorporated into the week-long event for those not looking to participate in sports. Lakehead University's Northern Studies Resource Center has a new name, but that will be a story for another week. Thank you so much for joining us for Northwest NEWSWEEK. We'll be back again next time with more of the top stories from across the region.